Hey everyone, Paulie here from HardDrive Radio, and I am joined now by the legendary David Draiman of Disturbed. Man, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming in to see us.
Good to see you too, brother.
First of all, congratulations on the release of the new album, Evolution.
Thank you.
It's got to feel good. I'm sure it's been a long time coming. How do you fill the time between like when you finish the record and then it's actually out?
By driving myself absolutely insane, slowly, painfully, rigorously. It's really terrible. We drive ourselves nuts because you're preparing for every aspect of the cycle. You're preparing from a touring perspective, you're preparing from a promotional perspective, and then there's sitting on the material, growing deeper and deeper in love with it, still unable to share it with everybody, the torture that comes with that. It's been busy. Very busy. I just moved to Honolulu last August, and I literally have spent almost no time there since we've moved because it's all been about writing, recording, and now promoting this record, which has become a fantastic labor of love. It's my favorite thing we've ever done.
It's certainly an aptly titled record with the name of Evolution, and the time that I've been able to spend with it, it's such a different Disturbed record. I mean, it's clearly a Disturbed record, but the songs that you were able to make with this one have clearly been a whole new level for you guys. At what point during this process did you kind of land on that as the name of this record, that you knew this was going to be Evolution?
At the end.
Yeah.
We were struggling with names. It was actually Danny's suggestion, and we were going back and forth with a couple ideas in an email chain, and he suggested it, and I was like, yes, that's it, absolutely. I'm in. I'm on board. It very accurately describes exactly what occurred over the creation of this record and what has occurred over the duration of our career. We have evolved, and not only as musicians and songwriters, but as human beings and friends. To be perfectly honest, we're stronger as a group now and closer than we've ever been.
Coming off the hiatus and putting out the Immortalised album was such a big moment. Even for me personally, just excited that you guys were back. So to come from that and then reaching where you are now with Evolution, what's kind of changed for you in the 3 years since the Immortalised album has come out?
A lot. My son is such a huge part of mine and my wife's life. He's our whole, universe, to be honest. Now he's 5 years old, all full of attitude and piss and vinegar, and just still cute as a button, which is why he's still relatively safe. And no, he's my entire world. I love him to death. So there's been that, and look, obviously what happened from the Immortalised record was we achieved a level of success that, to be perfectly honest, was unprecedented in our career. Every track released from that record ended up going #1 at radio. All the responses to it were just so overwhelming, and in particular with the obvious crossover explosion of our cover of The Sound of Silence, which ended up becoming a worldwide phenomenon and is now nearing on 500 million views. I mean, it's just insane. So a lot changed. It used to be that whenever I walked around without my old piercings, that I was very rarely recognized. It wasn't a common thing. I could be somewhat incognito. Doesn't matter anymore because my face was so front and center in that video, and it's been viewed so many times by so many people. Now it's like it doesn't matter whether I have them or not. People know, and and to go to a question which I'm sure you're going to ask at some point during this interview. Anyway, I felt it was time to do away with them, and they're cumbersome and just annoying and pain, and I it didn't feel right at this age. I got all this nice salt and pepper going on over here.
It's a good distinguished look. Yeah. I got mine too. I got a little cinnamon sugar. My wife
there
likes
you
to call
go.
it. You know, I was gonna ask about the piercings. Was like, I read, the write up about it, and I figured you pretty much said all you really need to say
Yeah,
about it. So I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I'm like, it's your face. You
What
can
I
put
thought
you want
was
in there or not.
hysterical is that, when the Metal Hammer article came out earlier on in the beginning of this whole story, it was pretty obvious I didn't have him in. So why didn't people lose their minds at that point? What was the catalyst that all of a sudden launched 100 articles that people went crazy about it? And I've said this on other things. I'll say it now. I really don't think that anybody is going to buy or not buy a Disturbed album and or ticket because I am or am not wearing my labret piercing. So
That's probably true.
yeah.
I want to talk more about the creation of this album and specifically the writing process for it. You were just saying you moved out to Hawaii. I think John lives down in Texas. You guys are really kind of spread out. For writing itself, are you flying to all get together and write? Is there a lot of traveling in that?
It became it's become a bit of a logistical nightmare. But we find the time, we make the time, and our lives have become more complicated as our families grow and get older, and our responsibilities, more and more gets added to our individual plates. So we were only able to get together twice for songwriting sessions prior to entering in the studio this time, and that's rare. And since we came back off the hiatus with Immortalised, we really recognized, even with the Immortalised record, as I spoke about at the time, that writing in front of each other, that doing it as a group in person, using each other as a barometer to see, how what you're coming up with is affecting someone, is incredibly effective. There's really no replacing it. There is no substitute. So even though we only got together twice prior to entering in the studio, there was some great stuff that was already begun, and realistically 70 to 80% of this record ended up being written in studio, which is a first for us. We're normally a lot more prepared going in, but circumstances being what they are and our lives getting a little bit more complicated, it was very reassuring and comforting to know that no matter where and when we get together, whenever we do, the chemistry is there and the magic is there.
I'm always amazed by stories. I talk to bands a lot and talk about their writing process, and they bust out, oh, we've written, 80, 90 songs, and then we go to the
100
studio.
plus, almost like 115 or 20 at this point.
And I always wonder, is all that extra effort worth it when you get into the studio? You're shaving it down to these 20 songs. How many of those ideas contribute to the process, and how many have kind of held it back because you're almost overloaded with the amount of material you have?
Well, sometimes that's a blessing in disguise, and I'll give you an example. The very first single off this record, "Are You Ready," was actually based off of a riff idea that Danny had from basically prior to writing Fists. So from 2004 roughly. So sometimes there's some gems that you can pick up, stuff that you didn't develop back at the time that maybe your head just wasn't in the right space for, or there could be any myriad of reasons that for whatever reason when he reintroduced it to me, which he's got a wonderful habit of doing that, of pulling things out from the vault that maybe I didn't get the first time. Well, let me wait a few years and see if he gets it now, which he did, and it was one of the pieces of music that I immediately gravitated towards with a melody and vocal arrangement, you can tell almost from it stylistically, it has that era of Disturbed feel to it. So that's not always a bad thing. Great music is great music, and it's always nice to be able to come back to something that had merit that you weren't able to develop fully originally.
Speaking of Are You Ready, it's got to feel good to have yet another #1 single. It's a #1 radio track. It's a #1 on the Billboard Modern Rock charts. I'm assuming it feels good. Is it passé for you at this point to have another
Not at
song?
all.
Are you over
Not
it?
at all.
No?
I'll never be over it. I always celebrate it. It always makes me have that grin that I can't hide. And see, look at that. It it never gets old. Really doesn't. It's always a cause for celebration, and I couldn't believe how quickly this one rose to number one. It faster than any track ever in our history. So it's really been an amazing thing to witness.
I was very excited about the idea that you had when the cycle for promotion kicked off with the poll for your fans to basically decide what the single was going to be. And I thought it was rather brilliant. You know, you didn't really have the songs out there people listen and choose. You just kind of gave these descriptions, you know, of like a heavy tune or stripped down tune. And people were able to kind of really think about, you know, what they want from Disturbed. And Are You Ready made the cut. But like, whose idea was that to kind of put that out there?
That was our co-manager Cliff Bernstein's idea. And since the fans had already seen so much of the creative process in the studio, and they knew that we were working on both styles of material, we figured we might as well put it in their hands. And it was a brilliant idea on Cliff's behalf. And the fans have a greater role in this thing than they sometimes realize. So it was nice to be able to trust them with it again.
And I assume they did not let you down.
They never do.
Of course not. The other song that was in that poll you guys released a few weeks ago, that's Reason to Fight. And such a really powerful song, but
Thank you.
A positive message. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about this album is you listen through all the tracks, and there's a lot of positivity in this album. You know, it talks about a lot of dark stuff, but it approaches it in a very positive way.
Right.
Was that intentional?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want people to feel that there's hope. You know, our music has always been used as a means of being able to transcend periods of people's lives that have been difficult, being able to persevere in the face of adversity, to feel empowered, to overcome. And we want people to feel that they have that ability to do just that. And with the Reason to Fight in particular, that one is particularly close to home for all of us. Each member of the band has suffered some pretty serious losses over the course of the past 3-4 years. And not just personally within our own individual families and personal lives, but us as a musical community. You know, how many of our friends and colleagues have fallen prey to the demon of addiction and depression, and I'm just so heartbroken by all of it and tired of being a spectator. I think it's high time for people to mobilize and to really take active roles in their loved ones' lives that they know are in crisis, and not wait till you're saying a eulogy for somebody. You know, be an advocate, get involved, have interventions, try to shock them into reality, try to be someone that becomes a reason for them to keep fighting.